Coming up on this Thursday edition of Daybreak, tough times ahead for President Obama as the Democrats suffer a devastating defeat and the Republicans grasp the greatest prize of the US midterm elections, control of the Senate. Speculation is rising that Korea and China could conclude the full text of their envisioned free trade agreement as both sides enter a 14th round of negotiations in Beijing today. Plus, top officials from 21 Asia-Pacific countries kick off the week-long annual APEC event in the Chinese capital, opening first with the senior officials meeting. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Thursday, November 6th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, the top trade officials of Korea and China are set to hold the 14th and possibly final round of talks for their free trade agreement in Beijing on this Thursday. A Chinese news agency reports that Korea's Trade Minister Yoon Sang-jik and China's Minister of Commerce Gao Hu-cheng's attendance at the meeting suggests the two sides could conclude the full text of the agreement before the upcoming Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or APEC meetings, also being held in Beijing. Previously, only vice ministers have attended the FTA negotiations. Now, both countries' presidents agreed during summit talks back in July to try and conclude the FTA negotiations before the end of the year. China is already Korea's leading trade partner, accounting for more than a quarter of Korea's overall exports in 2013. Bilateral trade between the two countries reached roughly $230 billion last year. Staying in Beijing, and leaders and top officials from 21 Asia-Pacific countries kicked off the week-long annual APEC event in the Chinese capital on Wednesday, opening first with the senior officials meeting. The gathering includes diverse forums and sideline talks between world leaders, but the highlight will be the official summit, where leaders including Korean President Park Geun-hye, US President Barack Obama, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and Russian President Vladimir Putin will discuss ways to enhance economic growth in the region. Now, one of the top agendas at this meeting is the creation of a free trade zone known as the Free Trade Area of the Asia-Pacific that will be led by China. Also, on the sidelines of the APEC summit, US President Barack Obama is going to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping when he arrives in Beijing next week. At the center of their discussions will be how to shape the new model of relations between the two superpowers, the only superpowers in the world these days, and how to deal with North Korea's nuclear threats. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
In their first major meeting since the Sunnyland Summit in June last year, Presidents Barack Obama and Xi Jinping are expected to try and answer a tough question. What will the relationship of their nations look like in the future? The White House says Obama will hold bilateral talks with his Chinese counterpart next Wednesday in Beijing on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. President Xi wants a new model of great power relations in which Beijing will have a bigger say in the region. China has been taking strides by escalating maritime confrontations, launching new diplomatic initiatives like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and toughening its position on issues like cybersecurity. While Washington has resisted such ambitions, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry stressed the importance of getting the relationship right.
The U.S.-China relationship is the most consequential in the world today, period. And it will do much to determine the shape of the 21st century. That means that we have to get it right.
The two leaders will also discuss regional and global issues ranging from North Korea's nuclear program, the Ebola outbreak, pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, and China's territorial dispute with Japan in the South China Sea. President Obama's 6-day, three-nation trip also takes him to Burma and Australia. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Korea and Qatar have agreed to jointly pursue a coal thermal power plant construction project in southern Turkey, following a meeting between President Park Geun-hye and the Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Seoul and Doha signed an MOU to take part in the $14 billion plant construction project. By combining Korea's advanced technology with Qatar's experienced capital management, the two sides seek to win similar infrastructure construction bids in third countries. President Park then sought Doha's support for Korean firms to win orders ahead of the 2022 World Cup finals set to be held in Qatar. She also promoted Korea's Northeast Asian Oil Hub initiative and then asked Qatar and other oil-producing countries to take part. Delegates gathered in Korea's southern city of Busan for the International Telecommunications Union meeting have passed a Korean-led resolution that aims to connect the world via the internet. The so-called Connect 2020 resolutions aim to foster access to and the use of ICT, bridge the digital divide, manage challenges resulting from ICT development and adapt to the changing technology environment. These resolutions also plan to ensure 55% of the entire world's households have access to the internet by the year 2020, while slashing the price of ICT services by 40%. If implemented on schedule, 15% of households in underdeveloped countries will also have access to the net by the target year. Now, a huge win for the Republicans in America's midterm elections has completed a power shift in Washington. For more on this and other global headlines we are following this Thursday morning here in Seoul, we turn to Eunice Kim, who's standing by for us at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. That's right. Republicans have won control over the Senate after winning some key states in the midterm elections. Results came in widely as expected, and now a Republican-controlled Congress threatens to present some challenges for the remaining 2 years of President Barack Obama's term in office. Connie Lee has more on the implications of this big sweep.
It's a big win for Republicans. They now have full control of the U.S. Congress.
And I just want to tell you right now that with your help and God's will, we will change the direction of our country.
Seen as a referendum on President Barack Obama, Tuesday's midterm elections brought out the voters who are unhappy about the current administration and the political gridlock in Washington. Republicans maintained their majority in the House and gained control of the Senate by picking up at least 6 seats in tight races all across America. The GOP sweep first started with Shelley Moore Capito, who won in West Virginia.
We were one of the first states to send a message to President Obama tonight that this president's agenda just isn't working for West Virginia.
Another winner was Republican leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, who was re-elected. Seen here casting his vote earlier in the day, McConnell is now set to become the Senate's majority leader. Analysts had been predicting a Republican victory as President Obama's approval ratings have hit their lowest levels since his inauguration. According to the latest Gallup poll, Obama's approval rating stands at just 42%, with 53% disapproving of his job as president. When the Republicans officially take over the Senate in January, it will be a tough final 2 years for the Obama administration. As of now, it's silence from the White House. But President Obama is set to make a public statement on Wednesday. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And on that note, President Obama did launch a press conference about an hour ago. He said he viewed the results of Tuesday's midterms as a message from Americans to Washington to get the job done. He said as president, he held the unique responsibility to make this town work and indicated he's eager to hear Republican ideas for governing together. President Obama will host both the Republican and Democratic Party's leadership at the White House on Friday. Earlier, incoming Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell pledged cooperation and promised there will be no government shutdown in the 2 years ahead, but warned that veto shutdowns were possible if Congress fails to see eye to eye with the president. McConnell begins his post in January. Turning to other news now, tensions in Jerusalem have turned deadly once again after a Palestinian rammed a car into pedestrians near the holy site of Temple Mount or Al-Haram al-Sharif compound. About a dozen people were injured and a policeman was killed. The driver, a member of Hamas, was shot dead by police. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it incitement by Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. The area saw a similar attack 2 weeks ago that killed a baby and an Ecuadorian woman. The Spanish nursing assistant who became the first person to contract Ebola outside of West Africa has been discharged from Carlos III Hospital following more than a month of treatment. There you see her. Teresa Romero had been kept at the Madrid hospital for follow-up care for about 2 weeks after being declared Ebola-free. In a press conference, the 44-year-old expressed her gratitude and said it was memories of family and her husband that had kept her going. She added she still did not know what exactly had led her to catch the disease, presumably from the 2 infected priests she had helped treat. Meanwhile, figures from the Africa Governance Initiative shows that infection rates in Sierra Leone has spiked 9-fold to an average of 12 new Ebola cases per day late last month from 1.3 cases at the start of September.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, pension reform was the hot topic, on the last day of a legislative questioning session at the National Assembly in Seoul on Wednesday. The main opposition party here in Korea said that if it's going to go along with the ruling party's plan to completely overhaul the system, it wants something in return. Now, Ji Myung-gil reports.
The pension reform plan for civil servants was the session's most debated issue, with the ruling Saenuri Party and the government pushing to pass the bill by year-end.
If we don't reform the pension program, the government will record a pension deficit of some $9.2 billion each year, which will be a disaster for our future generations and create a national burden. We ask for the cooperation of civil servants.
However, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is backing away from the proposed plan, saying social consensus must be reached at a national level. Political analysts say the two parties may be gearing up for under-the-table deals, as the opposition side is demanding a parliamentary probe into the 4 major rivers project. The controversial $20 billion project launched under the previous Lee Myung-bak administration has been a focus of concern for the opposition party, as well as environmental activists who believe it has harmed the river's ecosystem.
3 out of 4 people are calling for a parliamentary probe into the 4 major rivers project. The probe is aimed at digging up how taxpayer money was used. There is no reason for the rival parties to quarrel over the issue.
Last month, the two parties reached a last-minute deal on the contentious Seoul ferry bill, breaking months of political deadlock which logjammed key bills in parliament. As the governing Saenuri Party is eager to keep the legislative momentum going, pundits say it is likely that they will seek negotiations with the opposition and make concessions in order to quickly pass the pension bill. Ji Myung-gil. Arirang News.
Japan's central bank shocked global markets late last week by announcing a fresh set of stimulus measures aimed at boosting the Japanese economy, and Korea's benchmark stock index has certainly felt the effects, and not in a good way, as have Korean exporters who are seeking ways to try and keep up with their Japanese counterparts and now have a very big advantage over them. Now, Shin Se-min reports.
Korea's benchmark Kospi index closed down on all 3 days of this week. The auto sector is the hardest hit. On the first day to react to the Bank of Japan's stimulus announcement on Monday, shares of both Hyundai and Kia Motors dropped by more than 5.5%. And analysts blame the fall of exporters to the similarities that the two countries share. This is a reaction to BOJ's new stimulus program worth of trillions of yen announced last Friday and the following weakening in the Japanese yen. Investors are not liking Korean shares on concerns that the weak yen trend might erode profitability of Korean exporters.
Both Korea and Japan overlap in many ways, starting with its industrial structure. In the past, Korea mimicked Japan's high economic growth strategy, and in terms of export product lines like automobiles, semiconductors, and steel, they overlap. So it makes perfect sense that the Korean economy is being influenced by the course of the Japanese yen.
And Bank of Japan's Governor Haruhiko Kuroda said Wednesday that the central bank will do whatever it takes to throw out deflation, bringing down the yen to its lowest in nearly 7 years against the greenback. The Korean won also fell to a new 9-month low at 1,083.61 against the greenback. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, more bearish calls on Korea's main stock market these days, which has hardly been setting the world alight as it is, really. Analysts say poor third-quarter results from the nation's biggest tech firm, Samsung Electronics, has set off an unwelcome ripple effect that's sweeping over a great many other Korean firms, and adding to the woes is that many expect the hangover to stretch well into next year. Our Kim Ji-yeon has this report.
One by one, local securities firms are lowering their projections for Korean shares next year, citing a lack of growth momentum in the domestic economy. Kyobo Securities Company points to a faster-than-expected slump in exports as one of the main reasons, citing an earnings shock from Samsung Electronics. The Korean tech giant posted $3.8 billion of profit in the third quarter, down 60% from the same period last year.
There is no growth engine to supplement the low earnings performance of Samsung Electronics. The country's automobile sector isn't likely to improve anytime soon, either due to low global demand, and this will spill over to Korean shares next year.
Another analyst from Uri Investment and Securities projects that the country's shares will drop during the latter half of next year after experiencing a boost in the first half.
It's going to take up to 2 quarters for the stock market to reflect Seoul's expansionary monetary policies, including the Bank of Korea's cuts on the country's main benchmark interest rate. But it's going to be a different story in the latter half of 2015, mainly due to low domestic demand.
Projections for this year's main benchmark Kospi aren't all that bright either, as the gap between Korean shares and global shares are widening. The Kospi fell nearly 4% from the start of the year, the steepest drop among Asian countries. In contrast, the Dow Jones reached an all-time high, rising nearly 5% over the same period, while Japan's Nikkei inched up 3.5% on the back of Tokyo's expansionary monetary policies. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
LG Electronics and Google have signed a cross-licensing agreement that will give both companies access to each other's patents. The deal will include existing patents as well as ones that are registered all the way through until the year 2023. Through the agreement, LG will gain access to Google software patents such as data processing and information security, while Google gets the right to use LG's hardware devices. The two companies say the deal will boost their relationship and allow them to focus more on developing products and services together. Local marine archaeologists have managed to retrieve dozens of pieces of priceless Joseon-era porcelain that had lain submerged for at least 200 years at the bottom of Korea's West Sea. Our Park Ji-won reports.
This particular area off the coast of Chungcheongnam-do province near the county of Tan is a hotbed for shipwrecks. 4 ancient vessels have been found in these waters since 2007, and another has recently been discovered. Measuring about 11 meters long and 6 meters wide, the sunken ship was carrying over 100 white porcelain wares. Along with 2 puncheong were grayish green powder glazed ceramics, artifacts representative of Korea's Chosun dynasty. Experts believe the pieces date back to the late 18th century to early 19th century.
Seeing where the artifacts were recovered, we now know that the white porcelain was shipped by sea and traded between various regions.
This is the first shipwreck from the Chosun dynasty to be discovered in Korean waters. A dozen ancient shipwrecks found previously dated back to earlier periods, mostly from the Goryeo dynasty, which lasted from the early 10th to late 14th century. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off in the PGA, where the Captain's Day event took place in Incheon on Wednesday for the President's Cup 2015, which is now less than a year away. Now, with the U.S. team winning 8 of the past 10 President's Cup, international team captain Nick Price stated that they've got a lot of work ahead of them, adding that he's excited to have Chae Kyung-ju as the vice captain of the team. Meanwhile, 8-time PGA Tour winner Chae Kyung-ju stated that he'll do his best to promote the event so more and more people will know about the event and be a part of it. Now, the biennial event started in 1994, and the 2015 event will be its first in Asia. And now shifting over to Game 2 of the 2014 Korean Series between the Nexen Heroes and the Samsung Lions, with Nexen up 1-0 in the best-of-7 series. So let's take a look at the highlights from last night. And going into the game here, Samsung strikes first with Chae Tae-in's RBI double to left center. Yamiako Navarro scores, and it's 1-0 Samsung. But in the second inning, Yamiako Navarro with a man on deep to left field. Gone, his second home run this series, and Samsung takes a 3-0 lead. Bottom of the third inning, we go over to the Lion King, Lee Seung-yup. Make that 5-0 Samsung as the Samsung Lions continue to crush Henry Sosa. Now, Park Byung-ho would add a solo shot in the top of the fourth inning for Nexen, but that's all the offense for them as Samsung evens the series with a 7-1 victory. And now moving over to Wednesday night's KBL action, the Ulsan Movis Phoebus rallies to beat the struggling Anyang KGC 73-69, while the red-hot Seoul SK Knights and the Busan KT Sonic Blue faced off. So let's take a look at the highlights. Now the SK Knights take control early on the game, taking a comfortable 23-11 lead after the first quarter before heading into halftime with a 34-28 lead. Now, despite KT trying to change up their offense in the second half, SK led by Aaron Haynes' 14 points and 9 rebounds hold on to the win. This one 72-61 for their 5th straight victory. And now finishing things off with some domestic volleyball action over in the VLeague, starting off in the Women's League where GS Kartex took on Korea Expressway. Now, GS Kartex off to a great start here, taking a 25-22 first set win before Korea Expressway, led by Nicole Fawcett, take the second set 25-16. But GS Kartex's Sarah Pavan putting up a game-high 30 points, including 5 blocks in the game as GS Kartex wins the next 2 sets for a 3-1 victory. Meanwhile, over on the men's league here, Urikar taking on OK Savings Bank. This match a lot closer than expected as OK Savings Bank takes the 4th set after being down 2-1. But the decisive 5th set, despite Robert Landy Simone's 40-point effort, Urikar outscores OK Savings Bank 15-12 for a 3-2 upset win. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, fall is in full swing and maples have turned such a brilliant colors and highs have been on the mild side. Well, we'll get to have another beautiful autumn day today. Morning lows are starting out in the double digits and the highs will climb into upper teens in many areas. Well, right now we are looking at the layers of clouds, but by the lunchtime, the full sun will come out. But note that the level of fine dust particles could be relatively higher in the morning hours for the upper areas and later in the afternoon for the southern provinces. Keep that in mind, and here are the readings for today. Now, the daily low in Seoul started out at 10, then the daytime high in the capital, Gwangju, will top out at 18, while Daegu and Busan will be climbing into 20 this afternoon. For other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will be getting up to 18 later on, while Dokdo will see highs of 15. That's all for now. Back to you, Mark, in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jion, as always, for the weather report there. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up at 7 a.m. Korea time, and we'll be back throughout the day with many more news updates. Goodbye.